大家好啊，欢迎回到 English Zero to Hero。那今天呢，我们开始学习雅思的词汇啊。这些词汇呢是比较难的一些词啊，但是呢也不是特别的奇怪的词啊。也就是说，我会给你们教一些比较难啊，你们可能不知道，但是呢，你们在实际的阅读中还是会偶尔会遇到的一些词啊。我不会教那种就是你完全看不到的词，会教就是稍微常见一点的词。好，我们从第一个开始。好，我们开始。第一个词是 abashed。abashed 其实今天很少用啊，很少用。我们看一下这个 Google 的 Ngram。这个词呢，现在就是已经就是慢慢的开始不再有人用。不过最近呢，它又起来啊。不过这个最近常见的一种形式呢，其实不是 abashed， 是 unabashed 啊。unabashed 比较常见一些 ，unabashed 比较常见一些。我们来看看 unabashed 的用法，它的意思和用法。我来查 unabashed。abashed 啊，就是很不好意思啊，很不好意思。然后 unabashed 就是不是不好意思啊 ，unabashed 就是不脸红啊，不害羞。我们来看看 unabashed 的用法，比方说 brazen 和 unabashed 啊，非常的厚颜无耻啊，完全的没有不好意思，这是 brazen and unabashed。来看看 unabashed 的一些像电视剧啊什么的，或者是电视。
Americans are unabashed about talking about their First Amendment rights.
好，再听一遍，稍微慢一点。
What astounds me is that average, ordinary Americans are unabashed about talking about their First Amendment rights.
就是一般的美国人呢，对他们的 First Amendment rights 啊，我不是很确定 First Amendment rights 这是什么，就是持枪吗？可能是持枪的意思，我不是特别的确定啊。美国的这个历史我是不是特别的了解。然后 unabashed 就是他完全不脸红，完全不害羞啊。unabashed about talking 就是他说起这件事情，他完全不害羞啊，这个意思。再看一个例子啊。
Appearance to Ibn Fadlan must have been shocking because they were so unabashed and promiscuous.
他说他们非常的不害羞，而且非常的这个荒淫啊，非常的这个淫荡啊 ，unabashed and promiscuous 啊，再听一遍。
Appearance to Ibn Fadlan must have been shocking because they were so unabashed and promiscuous.
非常的淫乱啊，非常的这个不害羞，这 unabashed。再看一个例子，再找一下电视里面的例子啊，这个是书啊，这是一本书，找一下电视新闻什么的，会好一些。
Yang's unabashed willingness to confront reflects President Xi Jinping's unwillingness to change behavior because
好，他说 Yang's unabashed willingness to confront 就是说这个杨洁篪啊，他完全不害羞啊，他完全愿意去就是跟美国对着干啊，就是他完全不害羞啊，他没有害怕 unabashed。
Yang's unabashed willingness to confront
Young's unabashed willingness to confront 啊，就是他非常愿意去跟美国去怼美国啊，他完全不害羞，不脸红。好，还有没有？这个其实 unabashed 也很少见啊，但是 abashed 今天几乎看不到啊 ，abashed 今天人几乎不说。
Undeniably, unequivocally, the terminal at Dulles International Airport was undeniably, unequivocally, unabashedly an airport.
啊，他说他 unabashedly an airport. That means this is an airport, and stating this fact is not something to be embarrassed about. 好啊，再看一下， 我看来没有什么例子。好，那所以这就是 abashed 和 unabashed。abashed 意思就是害羞abashed 意思是害羞，然后 unabashed 就是完全不害羞，完全不脸红厚着脸皮这个意思。好，我们来看下一个词。Maybe I should use more English. Hello. I have 2 concurrent viewers. Not many, but it's a start. It's a start. It's a start. 万事开头难嘛，对不对？谁 like 我？谢谢你的 like。只有一个，我有一个 like。好我们继续。万事开头难。我在那个 Bilibili 上有10万个subscriber 但是 YouTube 上面我只有几百个。好，下一个词。The next word is abate. Abate means to slow down or to reduce in intensity 就是缓和的意思。So let's take a look at abate. Not abate. It's not 不是右耳不是 abate 是 abate like A-B-A-T-E abate. Let's take a look. Right. So first, let's take a look at the engram, which shows how word is used over time. So as we can see, it was really popular in the 1800s, but it slowly sort of declined. And today, not many people use abate. So let's take a look at examples of abate. Abate also means you can also say subside, right? Subside right now is a lot more common. We say something that's reducing in intensity. We say it subsides rather than abates. So really difficult words are just old words, right? If a word is really old and today not many people use them, then it becomes a very difficult word. So let's take a look at some examples.
Around the world. The competition that we face currently in the United States and around the world, it will abate and we'll be able to make money. It's very difficult to see that path at the moment.
All right, let's slow down a little bit and let's try again.
The competition that we face currently in the United States and around the world, it will abate and we'll be able to make money.
Right, so he's saying that right now the US is facing a lot of competition around the world, and this competition, the intensity of this competition will eventually lessen, will become less and less and less, and that is abate. So let's take a look again.
Will abate. The competition that we face currently.
The competition that we face currently in the United States.
In the United States and around the world, it will abate and we'll be able to make money.
Will abate, will eventually lessen, will eventually subside. Let's take a look at more examples.
Now, did that military presence abate or?
He said military presence abate. Right. Let's see. I want more context.
We're back, and I want to thank you for inviting us to Needles and talking to us.
Well, we had so much information. Back in May of '08, we had an object crash here off the Colorado River. This area is very remote, although in each direction.
Now, did that military presence abate?
Okay, he's asking a question. So he said, did that military presence abate? So 那个军事的 presence， 那这里有很多的军人那就叫做 military presence。很多的军人在这个地方就是 military presence。那他问的问题就是这个很多军官军兵在这里驻扎这个形势有没有减少呢？他们有没有把人撤走？就是did that military presence abate? Did it lessen? 所以 abate 就是越来越少的意思means it's reduced over time. That's abate. And the next word is abbreviate. Abbreviate. So this part, brief, that reminds us of brief, right? Brief. Brief 就是简短的，对吧？简短的。Also reminds us of the French word bref. bref. Bref is the same as brief, right? So abbreviate means to make something brief, make something shorter and more brief. So let's take a look at the examples of abbreviate. That means to shorten something and make something more brief. Let's take a look at examples of abbreviate. For example, an abbreviated form of a word. For example, want to can be abbreviated as wanna. I wanna do something, for example, right? Let's take a look. Abbreviate.
In abbreviated Latin on a giant ledger. Recording every whisker of wealth in abbreviated Latin on a... When the king... in abbreviated...
Okay, let's get more context.
For a year, the king's agents combed the shires of England, counting sheep and sheaves of wheat, recording every whisker of wealth in abbreviated Latin on a giant ledger.
So the person is recording something in abbreviated Latin, that is in a form of Latin that has a lot of abbreviations 是用缩写的拉丁语去写的这么一个清单再听一遍。
For a year, the king's agents combed the shires of England, counting sheep and sheaves of wheat, recording every whisker of wealth in abbreviated Latin on a giant ledger.
In abbreviated Latin on a giant ledger. Right. Again.
In abbreviated Latin on a giant ledger.
In abbreviated Latin on a giant ledger. Great. So let's take a look at more examples.
L, it's an abbreviated word.
Let's see.
There's a little symbol here and
let's slow it down.
There's a little symbol here, an L with a bar through it, which is Latin for vel. It's an abbreviated word, which means alternatively.
Alternatively, all right. Let's try again.
There's a little symbol here, an L with a bar through it.
他说这里右上角有个小小一个符号 ，There's a little symbol with a bar through it 有一个横线这么画过去。
There's a little symbol here, an L with a bar through it, which
有个 L， 然后一个横线这么画过去。
is Latin for vel.
这个拉丁语它其实代表的是 fell 这么一个词。
It's an abbreviated word.
It's an abbreviated word. 它是一个词的缩写。It's an abbreviated word, which means alternatively 所以这个 fell 意思就是 alternatively 换句话来说，这个意思。
Which means alternatively. So somebody it's an abbreviated word, which means alternatively.
Abbreviated word, which means alternatively. So what kind of abbreviations do we know? For example, in English, limited could be abbreviated into LTD, right? For example, incorporated could be abbreviated as ink, right? So these are abbreviations. All right, moving on. The next word is abdicate. Abdicate means to give up power, to give up a rulership. For example, a king can abdicate. A king says, "Oh, I don't want to be king anymore. I am bored of being king, right? So I don't want to be king anymore." That's abdication. So let's take a look at abdicate. Abdicate. Abdicate means I give up power. I'm not king anymore, like this guy, right? He walks away. I'm not the king anymore. You be the king. I don't want to be the king anymore.
At 7, he was forced to abdicate.
溥仪，爱新觉罗溥仪。
Leading character, Puyi, the last emperor. At 7, he was forced to abdicate.
At 7 years of age, he was forced to abdicate. He was forced to abdicate 啊，他被强迫弃权，不是弃权，是这个退位啊，被强迫退位。再听一遍啊。
At 7, he was forced to abdicate.
At 7, he was forced to abdicate.
At 7, he was forced to abdicate.
He was forced to abdicate. All right, let's take a look at more examples.
But what happens when the king abdicates the throne to bad behavior?
Let's listen again.
But what happens when the king abdicates the throne to bad behavior?
The king abdicates his throne, right? So as we can see, abdicate can take on an object. So the king abdicates. 这个国王他退位了啊，我不干了啊，我不想当这个国王。The king abdicates. We can also say the king abdicates his throne. 啊 it's like I have abandoned my throne. 啊，他把他的字面意思上是他放弃了他的王座，他放弃了他的王座啊。The king abdicates his throne. So we can either say the king abdicates, that's fine, right? We can also say the king abdicates his throne. So let's listen again.
But what happens?
Hello, everybody. Yeah, welcome to my live stream. You can comment. You can ask me questions if you want.
But what happens when the king abdicates the throne to bad behavior?
What happens if the king abdicates his throne to bad behavior? All right. So let's take a look at more examples.
Cairo also predicted that Edward VIII would be forced to abdicate the throne of England for the woman he loved.
All right, let's listen again.
Cairo also predicted that Edward VIII would be forced to abdicate the throne of England for the woman he loved.
Slow down a little bit.
Cairo also predicted that Edward VIII would be forced to abdicate the throne of England for the woman he loved.
All right. Hi, 你好 like. 早啊，我这温哥华是下午，温哥华现在是已经快晚上了，6点多了。趁着还有阳光，我做一些直播。
Cairo also predicted that Edward VIII would be forced to abdicate the throne of England.
他说这个 Edward VIII 啊，罗马数字8。Edward VIII was forced to abdicate the throne of England. 他 abdicate 是什么呢？他从什么位上退下来？他从 the throne of England， 从英国的王位上退下来啊。Edward VIII was forced to abdicate the throne of England. 对，还在继续。like 啊，一会儿我会做一些。好。
On the brink of collapse.
Let's take a look.
As the situation rapidly deteriorated, the Romanov dynasty, which had ruled for 300 years, teetered on the brink of collapse.
So that's a new sentence.
In the midst of the turmoil, the Tsar was forced to abdicate his throne.
So the Tsar, that is the Russian king, the Tsar, was forced to abdicate his throne. Right? So we often say abdicate the throne. I abdicate or I abdicate the throne. All right, so that's abdicate. That's to give up power. All right. Oops. Abduct. The next word is abduct. This is a very common word. To abduct means to commit abduction. Abduction. Abduction 就是绑架abduction. This is a back formation. This is called a back formation. Back formation 什么意思？就是本来没有 abduct 这个词，本来这个词不存在 本来只有 abduction 这个词，然后后来人一想啊，既然有 abduction， 那干脆把这个 ion 一去啊，变成一个 abduct 啊，这就出来一个新的词儿叫 abduct 啊，这叫做 back formation， 就本来没有这个词儿啊。另外一个 back formation 很有意思，就是 editor 啊 ，editor 啊是编辑的意思啊。后来人一想，既然编辑是 editor， 那编辑作为动词那就是 edit， 好不好？那后来人就开始说 edit 啊 ，I'm gonna edit this text 啊，本来没有 edit 这个词，本来只有 editor， 后来人想，哎，那我把这个 or 一去，那我干脆就叫 edit， 所以这是 abduct 也是一样啊，它是一个 back formation。我们来看 abduct 就是 to forcefully take someone away 啊 let's see
Driving by the town he was first abducted.
So he was abducted. I'm not sure. Maybe by aliens? I'm not sure. A&E. Right? A&E shows anything. Let's see.
Driving by the town he was first abducted.
Driving by the town he was first abducted. So he was first abducted in this town. He was forcibly taken away from this town.
Driving by the town he was first abducted.
Let's see.
Cal Hughes was convicted of abduction and sentenced to 50 years in prison.
So he was convicted of abduction, right? So he was convicted of a crime. What's the crime? That's abduction. So he abducted someone, and then he was sentenced to 50 years in prison. That's a long sentence.
Cal Hughes was convicted of abduction and sentenced to 50 years in prison.
That's a long sentence. 50 years in prison.
Cal Hughes was convicted of abduction and sentenced to 50 years in prison.
So he abducted someone, and therefore he was convicted of abduction. Right. Let's continue.
Famous in history, the abduction of Helen by Paris, Agamemnon's
Abduction of Helen by Paris. I'm not too sure what the story is. I guess it's this is History Channel, so I guess it's probably like Roman history or something like that. Abduction of Helen by Paris 啊，就是 Helen 被这个 Paris 的绑架啊，就是Paris 绑架 Helen 的这件事情。The abduction of Helen by Paris. Abduction 就是绑架。
Apart. The abduction of Simic will be led by Lieutenant Commander Zinke.
我们想要 abduct Simic 这个人 Let's listen again.
The abduction of Simic will be led by Lieutenant Commander Zinke.
Again.
The abduction of Simic will be led by Lieutenant Commander Zinke.
So they were planning to abduct this person, Zinich. Any questions? No? All right. So that's abduction. Questions? Okay, moving on. The next word is abhor. Abhor means to hate something really bad. Right? If I hate something really, really bad, I abhor it. Let's take a look at abhor. Abhor is pretty common. Yeah, we hear that very often. Abhor. I absolutely abhor it. All right. So the woman is saying, "Oh, I abhor it. I abhor this food. I abhor this smell. Or I abhor this dress," etc. So the opposite of abhor is adore. You can adore something when you really love something. That's adore. And if you hate something really bad, that's abhor. Let's take a look.
barbarian children is utterly abhorrent to Rome.
Okay, later on we're going to learn abhorrent. It's the adjective form of abhor. If you abhor something, you are abhorrent to something. Then that something is abhorrent to you. Later on we're going to take a look at abhorrent. So, repulsive and abhorrent crime. I think abhorrent is a lot more common.
I abhor the violence.
I abhor the violence.
I abhor the violence.
But notice that she says abhor, which is interesting. I've never heard people saying abhor. So she is not pronouncing the H. She's simply saying abhor.
I abhor the violence.
I abhor the violence. I hate the violence.
Tattooing did not fit into the matrix of this ideology.
The Romans so abhorred the tattoo.
The Romans so abhorred the tattoo. I'm not too sure what tattoo this is referring to. Yeah, it's not really showing, but...
Cleanliness is a form that could be perfected over the course of an individual's life. Tattooing did not fit into the matrix.
So the Romans didn't like tattoos
ideology
at all.
The Romans so abhorred the tattoo that they used it as a brand of shame on criminals.
So Romans really hated tattooing, right? They hated all kinds of tattoos. And in fact, they're using it to punish criminals. They tattoo words on your body to shame you, to make you ashamed.
Tattooing did not fit into the matrix of this ideology.
The Romans so abhorred the tattoo that
they really abhorred the tattoo. All right, so that is abhor. That means really hate something. Hate something really bad. Hate something in your guts. All right, so let's move on. The next word is abhorrent. Abhorrent is simply the adjective form of abhor, right? So abhor, that's a verb. If you wanted to make it into an adjective, that becomes abhorrent. You just add rent at the end of it. Abhorrent, abhorrent. So let's take a look at abhorrent. In fact, it's right here.
Most repulsive and abhorrent crime we can ever even imagine.
An abhorrent crime, 令人憎恶的这个罪行，令人切齿的罪行。Abhorrent crime. Killing is an abhorrent crime. Rape is an abhorrent crime.
Repulsive and abhorrent.
Notice that he said repulsive and abhorrent. Right? This is utterly repulsive. 这让我就反胃啊 repulsive. 再听一下 context， 然后慢一点啊。
Is the Minotaur's thirst for human flesh an encoded message about cannibalism?
It's the most repulsive and abhorrent crime we can ever even imagine.
All right. So he said this is about cannibalism. When a person eats another person, that's cannibalism. Cannibalism, because you're eating your own kind. Cannibalism. He said this cannibalism is the most abhorrent crime. Now let's listen again.
Repulsive and abhorrent crime we can ever even imagine.
It's the most repulsive and abhorrent crime.
Repulsive and abhorrent crime.
Abhorrent crime. Let's take a look at more examples.
Before, you called some of his previous comments abhorrent.
Let's listen again.
Called some of his previous comments abhorrent.
Again.
Called some of his previous comments abhorrent.
So the woman on the right has called some of the previous comments abhorrent. So prior to this, she said, oh, these comments are just abhorrent. And she used that word, abhorrent. Right. So that's what she meant.
Called some of his previous comments abhorrent.
You called some of his previous comments abhorrent. That means, she said, I absolutely abhor his comments. 我觉得这些 comments 非常的讨厌。
Called some of his previous comments abhorrent.
All right, so that's abhorrent. It's the adjective form of abhor. And the next word is ablaze. Ablaze. Do you know what blaze is? Blaze. Blaze simply means fire. Right? It's the same as fire. So ablaze is the adjective form of blaze. And it means on fire. On fire. Set something ablaze. Set something ablaze is the same as set something on fire. On fire. Let's take a look at ablaze. Ablaze. Etymology. Ablaze is from and blaze, and the etymology of blaze is Old English. Okay, so it's an Old English word. So it's plus blaze. So that's the house is ablaze. The house is ablaze. It's on fire. Ablaze is the same as on fire, or afire. Ablaze is the same as afire. Set it afire. Set it ablaze. It's the same, right? Set it afire. Set it ablaze. Okay, so let's take a look at examples.
This on a blaze, feeling good, a little bird on my...
It's a song. All right, let's take a look at something that's not a song.
And then all of a sudden, the whole front end was ablaze.
So they're talking about the front line.
And then all of a sudden, the whole front end was ablaze.
Okay, so the front end is probably the front end of a ship. 可能它指的是这个船的船头啊，它船头都着火了。The front end was ablaze. Let's listen again.
And then all of a sudden, the whole front end was ablaze.
The whole front end was ablaze. 他这么说的。看下一个例子。
That's the only way to describe it. The Confederates are leaving a capital ablaze, a capital in ruin, an idea in ruin, a political system in ruin. It's the end.
All right, so the city is ablaze, right? The city is on fire.
No, Dick, that's the only way.
Let's slow it down. Listen again.
Way to describe it. The Confederates are leaving a capital ablaze.
The Confederates, 这是美国当时内战的一个派系啊，就是 Confederates， 就是南北战争那个南边啊，就是 Confederates. The Confederates are leaving the capital ablaze, are leaving the capital referring to, I'm not too sure which city, Atlanta, I'm not sure, leaving it ablaze, leaving it ablaze, so leaving it on fire 啊，就是他们离开这个 capital， 离开这个首都啊，然后让这个首都去烧吧，让这个首都烧啊，就是 leave it ablaze.
Way to describe it, the Confederates are leaving a capital ablaze, a capital in ruin.
A capital in ruin. Ruin 就是完全被摧毁的这个状态啊。In ruin 就是它是被摧毁掉了啊。好，再看一些别的例子。
In Oakland, California, protesters lit a courthouse on fire.
They lit a courthouse on fire. Courthouse 就是法庭啊，法院。他把这些抗议的人，这些 protesters 把这个法院给烧了。They lit it on fire. Lit 就是 light 的过去式嘛。Light. I light. Now I lit before. Right? I lit. Lit it on fire. Lit a courthouse on fire. 就把一个 courthouse 给点着了。
In Richmond, Virginia, vehicles were set ablaze.
Vehicles were set ablaze. 车被点着了，车被点着了。Vehicles were set ablaze 啊，这车都被点着了。Vehicles were set ablaze. 再听一遍啊。
In Oakland, California, protesters lit a courthouse on fire.
They lit a courthouse on fire.
In Richmond, Virginia, vehicles were set ablaze.
Set ablaze. So usually we say light on fire, light something on fire. And then we also say set something ablaze. And we say light on fire and set ablaze. Light, they lit. Well, the past tense is lit. 这是过去时啊，过去时是 lit. Lit the courthouse on fire. And then we say set the vehicles ablaze. Right. So lit on fire, set ablaze. Let's take a look at more collocations just to make sure. See, we say set ablaze. Oh, we can also say lit ablaze. Right? We can also say lit ablaze. Lit ablaze is okay too. We can also say caught ablaze. It becomes ablaze. Remains ablaze. The sale chart ablaze. 你们这个 sales 很好啊，这个卖得很好。Sales chart ablaze. All right. So that's ablaze. Ablaze means on fire. We usually say set something ablaze. Please don't come to my home and set my home on blaze. I need to live here. Okay, sure. Next one. The next word is Aboriginal. Aboriginal. Do you know what original is? Original. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, 就是本来的啊，本来的就是 original. Aboriginal 意思是土著啊，土著。比方说美国的那个印第安人啊，就是 Aboriginal Americans 啊 ，Aboriginal， 我们也可以直接把它说成 Aboriginals. They are Aboriginals. So this could be a noun or an adjective. Right? So as a noun, we can say the Aboriginals of America. Or we can say they are aboriginal to this land. So let's take a look at aboriginal. Aboriginal. It's another word for native. Right? It's a native to a land. Aboriginal to a land. Right? These are aboriginals. Aboriginal.
Aboriginal Australians are one of the oldest and most resilient cultures in the world.
A group of Aboriginal Australians. 澳大利亚的土著。
A group of Aboriginal Australians are one of the oldest and most resilient cultures in the world.
Right, Aboriginal Australians. So in this case, what is Aboriginal? Is it a noun or adjective? Does anybody know if this word is a noun or adjective here? Yeah, it's an adjective. A group of Aboriginal Australians. 他们是土著的澳大利亚人。So here, this is an adjective, but I can find some examples of nouns. Aboriginal. Let me find an example of a noun. Actually, I can't find Aboriginal nouns on TV. But okay, let's take a look at more examples of Aboriginal as an adjective.
Noel Butler is a proud Boodawang elder, a famous artist, teacher, and practitioner of Aboriginal culture.
He practices Aboriginal culture, 土著文化 Aboriginal culture.
Butler is among those who wonder if a return to the Aboriginal practices might have deprived the megafires of fuel.
Let's listen again. Aboriginal practices 他们土著的做法，土著的一些风俗Aboriginal practices 土著的一些做法，一些做事情的方法。再看一些例子。
When you think for 100,000 years, Aboriginal people, how long we've kept this.
Aboriginal people 原始不是原始人，就是土著人土著人。
When you think for 100,000 years, Aboriginal people.
Of water permeating a lot of Aboriginal
Aboriginal populations， 土著人口 Aboriginal populations.
Pond. We have the theme of water permeating a lot of Aboriginal populations. It's part of their origin myths.
水对于他们很重要。
Pond. We have the theme of water permeating a lot of Aboriginal populations. It's part of their origin myths. So.
再听一遍啊。
Pond. We have the theme of water permeating a lot of Aboriginal populations.
在土著的人口中，水这个主题 the theme of water， 水这个主题呢 permeate a lot， permeate 就是弥漫的意思 permeate 啊，整个这个 Aboriginal population 他们都信这个水啊，都在他们神话中有很多这个水的主题。
Pond. We have the theme of water permeating a lot of Aboriginal populations.
啊，所以 Aboriginal 就是土著啊，因为他们 originally they were on this land, right? Originally they were on this land. They were Aboriginals. Well, they're still Aboriginals. So that's Aboriginals. And the next word is interesting. It's abortive. Abortive. Let's take a look at abortive. Abortive. This word, it's losing traction. It's losing its popularity. So as you can see, it was really popular in the 1800s, and eventually it sort of lost its steam. Right now, it's not very popular anymore. But in any case, abortive means to fail, means to be unsuccessful. For example. One moment. It's not loading. Next. Copyright claim. In any case, so here, this is an audiobook. It's saying, I could not see, in either case, Holmes had come upon the clue for which he was searching. And then, only at the third did our visit prove abortive. 就是我们去造访的第三次，只有第三次是失败的abortive。但是今天呢 ，abortive 还有一个意思呢，就是跟 abortion 跟流产有关的就是 abortive， 比方说 abortive pills 流产药吃这个流产藥 abortive pills， 还有什么这个 abortive， 但是这个用法比较少，看来比较难找这个用法。今天我们很少说 abortive pills， 我们说 abortion pills 今天我们很少用 abortive 这个形式，我们都说 abortion pills 流产药是 abortion pills 然后多数的用法意思是失败，比方说it was ultimately abortive 最后是失败的。还有什么an abortive military coup 这叫什么这叫什么颠覆颠覆政府的这个行为最后失败了abortive military coup 这个军事的这个颠覆给失败了abortive。但是现在这个词已经很少用了很少见。所以刚才我在电视里面想找不到电视里面没有人说 abortive， 只有这个福尔摩斯那个书里面说 abortive 所以你不知道也可以这个字其实也不知道也可以反正 abortive 就是失败的因为本来它进行很顺利，然后后来它 abort eventually they hit a wall, right? They couldn't go through anymore, so they have to abort. So they fail. So abortive simply means failed, right? Failed. They had to abort. They had to stop. Failed. Also, it can be relating to abortion, but it's rare, right? This is rare. Okay, next. The next word is abound. Abound simply means to have a lot. Have a lot. or is everywhere. Abound is pretty common. Let's take a look at abound. 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 Usually we say, for example, theories abound. Theories abound 就是有很多很多的理论，有很多很多的一些假设啊。Theories abound。一般我们说是什么什么什么 abound 啊，就something abound， 意思就是这个东西很多。这个 abound 在这里是形容词，形容词。So for example, rumors abound 就是有好多好多的这个流言传言啊，好多好多的 rumors abound。还有什么 theories abound 就是有很多很多的猜想，很多的猜想 theories abound。So we usually say something abound。我们不说 abound， 我们不说 abound theories， abound theories， 我们不这么说啊，不这么说。好，再看一些例子啊。Abound。Opportunities abound， 有很多的机会 ，opportunities abound。还有 for example, experience abound. Let's take a look at more examples on TV.
For tempters and blasphemers abound.
Tempters and blasphemers abound.
For tempters and blasphemers abound, and those who love evil are in our midst. For tempters and blasphemers abound, and those who love evil are in our midst.
Right. So he's saying that tempters 就是引诱的人啊，这些诱惑者，和 blasphemers 那些辱骂上帝的那些就是亵渎者啊，亵渎者到处都是，亵渎者到处都是。For tempters and blasphemers abound 啊，他们这些人到处都是。再看一些例子啊。
Then, the state of the State Department. Concerns abound following the ouster of an inspector general.
他说 concerns abound 就是有很多的忧虑，公众有很多的忧虑。Concerns abound 就是到处都是忧虑啊，忧虑到处都是啊 ，concerns 到处都是。再听一遍啊。
Then, the state of the State Department. Concerns abound following the ouster of an inspector general.
好，再看一个例子啊。
Several theories abound as to the origin of these legends. Several theories abound as to the origin of these legends.
这些传奇的起源啊，有很多的猜想，有很多的假设，有很多的 theories 啊，很多的理论。
Several theories abound as to the origin of these legends.
Several theories abound.
Several theories abound as to the origin of these legends.
Hitler. Theories abound that it may allow its holder to become invincible.
当时有很多的这个 theory.
Theories abound that it may allow its holder to become invincible.
哎，美国这个历史 channel 越来越不行了啊，老是说那些theories， 就是说那些莫名其妙的事情啊。美国那个历史频道现在都不太讲历史了啊，现在讲的都是什么外星人、什么金字塔、什么这东西。
Theories abound that it may allow its holder to become invincible.
The theories abound 那历史频道说是有很多很多的这个说法啊，说当时那个是不是人用了这个就会变得所向披靡、所向无敌啊，都会 become invincible。好，所以 abound 就是到处都是，很多很多，有很多。一般我们的这个结构呢是什么什么 abound 啊，就是什么东西到处都是啊，就是 something something plus something abound。abound 也这不是动词啊，不是 abounds， 不是动词，这是形容词。Theories abound。 还有这个什么 theories abound， 还有等等啊，我说错了，不是形容词，这不是形容词，这是动词，不行，我这个录的不好，不好意思，很抱歉，我再重新录一遍，这个没录好。Chinese Euro courses. 好，我再说一遍，有没有什么问题啊？这个其实是一个动词，我刚才说错了，不是形容词，它是动词，动词它意思是大量的充满。我眼睛没看到这块应该是它是动词啊。Theories abound， 因为 theories 是复数啊，所以它是 abound。然后 grace abounds， 比方说 grace abounds， 那就是 grace abounds， 那就是这个什么恩典，恩典很多，恩典很丰富 ，grace abounds。wildlife abounds， 这因为 wildlife 是单数，不可数嘛，单数，所以的话 abounds 就是那个加 s。Confusion abounds， 对，我搞错了，它是个动词，说错了，我再录一遍，好，加油，重新录一遍 abound。下一个词很常见啊，是 abound。Abound means having a lot, right? So, for example, we can say wildlife 就是野生物嘛，野生动物。Wildlife abounds， 这个 abound 它是一个动词啊，意思就是有很多。野生动物到处都是，就是到处都是的意思，都是。You can think of this as having a lot or is everywhere. So let's take a look at more examples of abound. Examples abound. Yeah, we have a lot of examples. So examples abound. Let's take a look at some collocations first. For example, we can say theories abound. We have a lot of theories. 有很多的说法，很多的理论啊。Theories abound. Opportunities abound. 有很多的机会。Opportunities abound. 还有，再看看别的哈。Myths abound. 有很多的一些猜想啊，一些杜撰出来的事情 ，myths， 也可以是说神话哈，神话有很多也可以啊 ，myths abound，rumors abound， 有很多的一些传言，rumors abound，grace abound， 有很多的恩典 ，grace abounds，grace abounds， 第三人称单数啊 ，abounds，rumors myths 因为是复数啊，所以动词就是 abound， 而Grace 因为是单数啊，所以就是 abounds. Grace abounds. Stories abounds. Stories abound. And examples abound. Wildlife abounds. Wildlife 是不可数名词啊，所以是 abounds. 我们来看看一些电视上的一些用法。
Several theories abound as to the origin of these legends.
再听一遍。
Theories abound as to dragons never existed. Several theories abound as to the origin of these legends.
说 several theories abound. Several theories abound as to the origin of these legend，就是说关于这些 legend，关于这些 legend 的起源，关于这些传说的起源，有许许多多的一些理论，有许许多多理论。Several theories abound as to the origin of these legend 有好几个理论。Several theories abound as to the origin of these legends. 应该是 legends， 刚才是 legends right? Several theories abound as to to the origin of these legends. Right? So we can say several something abound. So something abounds. Right? You can say something abounds. So noun plus abounds. Abounds, depending on the number of the noun. Right? Noun abounds. So this is a intransitive verb， 它是不及物动词。好，再看一些例子，多看一些例子你就明白了。没有 abounds。
Cause is profound, and history abounds with evidence of such a beast.
好，这是一个很特别的用法 ，abound with， 这是第二种用法，这是第一个结构，哎，第一个结构，然后第二个结构是 place， 然后 abounds with。abounds 或者是 with， 对 with now， 就是这个地方有很多很多的这个东西啊，这个地方这个 place 里面有很多很多这个东西。如果这个 place 是单数的话，那这个 abound 就是 abounds， 对吧？啊，它当动词讲，主语是这个地方。比方说刚才这句话里他说 history abounds， 就是历史上有很多的一些证据，历史这个抽象的地方里面有很多的证据。 History abounds with evidence of such a beast， 啊，有这样的野兽。再来听一遍，有没有什么问题？
Is profound, and history abounds with evidence of such a beast。
我们说是传说中有这样子的这个野兽啊，有没有什么问题？这个有点难理解啊。这比方说 history abounds with 什么什么，意思是在历史上有很多啊，这跟第一个形式完全不一样啊。要不然这样，我给你举一个例子啊。第一个形式的话，我们可以说evidence of this beast abounds in history。这是第一种形式啊，这是第一种形式。第二种形式是 history abounds with evidence of this beast。刚才他说的是第二句话啊，哎，等等，刚才他说的是第二个句型 ，history abounds with evidence of this beast。History abounds. History 是这个抽象的地方。History abounds with evidence of this beast. 换成第一种说法就是 evidence of this beast abounds in history。这两种都是一个意思啊，只是它所以这个 abounds 这个词用法挺复杂的啊，用法挺复杂。你可以说一个地方 abounds with， 这必须要有个 with 啊，必须得有个 with。Abounds with. History abounds with evidence of this beast。用第一种说法的话，那是 evidence of this beast abounds in history. Abounds in history. 再来听一遍啊。
Is profound, and history abounds with evidence of such a beast.
History abounds with evidence of such a beast. 好，有点复杂啊，反正 abound 就是有很多 ，abound with 就是含有很多的意思。我们来看看下一个词。The next word is abrasion. Abrasion means to wear and scratch the surface. scratch the surface of something. For example, if I play skateboard, for example, if I skateboard and then my wrist, not my wrist, my elbow isn't protected, and then I scrape it against the wall or against the ground, and then I get abrasion on my wrist. Right? 我们来看看一些图片，你就知道了。Abrasion. Right, so that's abrasion. See that? 蹭伤，就是 abrasion. 蹭伤划伤就是 abrasion. 像比方说在沙子上面这么蹭一下，哎呦，好痛。然后that injury is abrasion. So let's take a look.
It's a given, considering the abrasion.
Considering the abrasion, taking the abrasion on the object into consideration. 考虑到它是表面的一些磨损。
I would say that that's a given, considering the abrasion. It'll be interesting to see.
All right, 看看别的例子啊。Abrasion.
Tied, contusions, abrasions around the neck.
Abrasions around the neck.
Contusions, abrasions around the neck.
Contusion 什么意思？看看。Contusions 挫伤的意思，挫伤 contusions 这还真没看过。Contusions, abrasions around the neck. 好，再听一遍啊。
Contusions, abrasions around the neck.
Contusions, abrasions around the neck. Right. Abrasions around the neck. 可能有人抓我然后我有 abrasion.
Contusions, abrasions around the neck.
Contusions, abrasions around the neck. 好，再看下一个例子。下一个例子。
I'm not sure about the abrasions, whether they were caused before or after he entered the water.
Right. He wasn't sure about the abrasions, whether it was before or after entering the water.
I'm not sure about the abrasions, whether they were caused before or after he entered the water.
再听一遍。
I'm not sure about the abrasions, whether they were caused before or after he entered the water.
So I'm not too sure whether the abrasions 就是你划伤它是进了水之后，然后在水底下被划伤的，还是在水上面已经被划伤，然后被扔到水里头。
I'm not sure about the abrasions, whether they were caused before or after he entered the water.
好，下一个。
Activity but no abrasion. Plenty of seconal, evidence of recent sexual activity but no abrasions.
No abrasions.
The ME also concludes.
看看有没有别的例子。
That dude had abrasions around his wrists.
Wrists 这个手腕是 wrist 这个叫 elbow， 这叫 wrist。刚才我给搞混了。Wrist. There are abrasions around his wrists. So 他两个 wrist 他都有这个划伤。
That dude had abrasions around his wrists.
The dude had abrasions around his wrists. Right.
To withstand the abrasion and abuse that occurs in different types of technical diving and rescue work.
Okay.
And the abrasion and abuse that.
Abrasion and abuse. That means this product is going to go through a lot of heavy use.
And the abrasion and abuse that occurs in different types of technical diving and rescue work.
Right. So this product, after it's made, is made to be used in rescue work. Right? To be used in rescue work, it's going to withstand a lot of abrasion and abuse. So people are going to just do whatever they want to it, not really treating it with any kind of care. So it's going to endure a lot of abrasion, 很多的磨损和很多的滥用，磨损和滥用。好，所以这是 abrasion。And the next word is abridge. Abridge simply means to build a bridge. To build a bridge. No, just kidding. It's not to build a bridge. It has nothing to do with bridge 啊，这跟 bridge 完全没有关系，完全没有关系。A bridge 意思是缩写啊 ，it means to make something shorter, to make some text shorter. For example, let's take a look at a bridge. A bridge. Actually, this word is losing traction as well. So if we look at the n-gram, we can see that this word is slowly phasing out, right? We're seeing this word less and less. But unabridged is very frequently used today, even today. Right? Unabridged. Right? See, unabridged is pretty popular. Unabridged means not reduced, not reduced. For example, a dictionary that's unabridged, that means this dictionary is in its full form. 未被删减的、未被缩写的、未被精炼的那种原本就是 unabridged。比一个词典，如果它是厚厚的一沓啊，它是人一开始编这个词典的时候完全没有经过任何的删减的那种形式，叫做 unabridged dictionary。所以人说你有没有什么 unabridged 什么 dictionary 啊？意思就是你有没有这么重重的一本啊，本起来的很难的那种词典啊，这叫 unabridged dictionary。小说也可以是 unabridged unabridged literary work, unabridged novel, unabridged story，意思是一本很长很长篇幅的没有经过任何删减的原版的那种小说啊，就是 unabridged unabridged novel。那 abridged 就是被删减的。所以 abridge 可以猜出来啊，就是删减啊 ，to abridge something。但是 to abridge something 这个用法现在已经很少了啊，一般我们会说 abbreviate 啊，或者是 to summarize， 或者是 to shorten something。Right? We don't say I have to abridge it. We seldom say this. Right? We seldom say this. So let's see abridge.
No state shall make or enforce.
Right, so this is quoting a historical document.
No state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges or immunities of citizens of the United States.
It says, no state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges
No state shall
or immunities of citizens of the United States. 就是没有任何一个州可以减少啊，可以 abridge， 也就是减少本州的这个美国公民的权利啊，没有任何一个州可以减少他的公民的权利，那这叫减少啊，也是 abridge， 减少权利也是 abridge。但是这个是以前写的啊，今天肯定会换一个词儿，今天肯定是shall take away， 或者是 shall reduce， 或者 shall lessen 啊，但是当时这个英语比较旧啊，它用的是 abridge。
No state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges or immunities of citizens of the United States.
Shall abridge the privileges or immunities of citizens of the United States 啊 ，immunities 就是一些等于说免除责任一种免责权，比方说你做了什么坏事儿，然后但是你不受你不会受到惩罚，这就叫 immunities 啊。好，不管怎么样，反正这是 abridge 的一个用法。看看啊
Has any right to abridge that guarantee?
没有任何人可以
And that no one,
没有人
individually or collectively
啊，不管是个人还是集体的
has any right to abridge that guarantee.
都不能去把这个 guarantee， 把这个叫什么啊，保证这个担保啊，把这个担保给 lessen， 给 abridge 了啊，不能去缩小或者是缩短、减少啊这种 guarantee。所以这是一个非常陈旧的一个词，这是非常陈旧的一个词。然后再看一个别的例子啊。
On it is in Hebrew language, it has the abridged text from the Exodus version of the Ten Commandments.
好，他这里说 abridged text 意思是缩短了的文字啊，缩短了的文章，缩写了的文章。
In Hebrew language, it has the abridged text from the Exodus version of the Ten Commandments.
啊，他说这是十诫的，这是出埃及记啊 ，Exodus 是出埃及记啊，圣经里一本书叫出埃及记，它里面记载那个十诫啊，十诫这里他提到的是，这是缩短了的那个版本啊 ，abridged text。
In Hebrew language, it has the abridged text from the Exodus version of the Ten Commandments.
说的有点慢，还说的有点快，我们再听一遍。
In Hebrew language, it has the abridged text from the Exodus version of the Ten Commandments.
反正 abridge 就是要么是剥夺啊，或者是减少啊，或者是缩写、缩短，那这个意思啊。一般今天最常用的形式就是 unabridged。比方说 unabridged dictionary、unabridged novel， 就是未经缩减的啊，未经缩减的啊，比方说词典 dictionary， 或者是小说等等，明白了吗？这是 unabridged， 有没有什么问题？下一个词是 absolve 就是说你没罪啊，你不用负责啊，你走吧，你回家吧啊，这也没你的事儿了啊。这 absolve 就是说是你无罪啊，宣判你无罪。我们来看看 absolve 的用法。
But I have you to absolve me, right?
You have to absolve me, right?
But I have you to absolve me, right?
你要让我置之事外是吧？你要让我无罪啊，意思就是你要让我无罪，是不是
I absolve you from your sins in the name of the Father and the
这
Son.
是一个牧师啊，牧师说是我现在宽恕你的罪，我现在赦免你的罪。
I absolve you from your sins in the name of the Father.
他说我以父亲之名啊，我以这个上帝之名啊去赦免你的罪，是天主教的那个神父。
I absolve you from your sins in the name of the Father.
好，然后再看啊， Hello， 你们好。这个 load 有点慢，好，换下一个例子。不好意思，换一个例子。
And the Holy Spirit, I absolve you of your sins.
啊，好像天主教牧师都是这样说啊，我赦免你的罪 ，I absolve your sins。他们好像就是都用这个词儿。
And the Holy Spirit, I absolve you of your sins.
我赦免你的罪过。再看看有没有别的例子啊。
against, but it didn't absolve the company either.
这没有赦免那个公司的罪。再听一遍。
But it didn't absolve the company either.
我们再听一下上下文啊。
Noble was fired a month later, and eventually the EEOC said it couldn't determine whether she had been discriminated against, but it didn't absolve the company either, and said Noble could sue.
Noble could sue， 他可能是被歧视还是怎么？这个女的被歧视，然后被那个公司给解雇。这个事情。
Noble was fired a month later, and eventually the EEOC said it couldn't determine whether she had been discriminated against.
他说 EEOC 可能是他们美国的这个相当于咱们的宣传部，就美国的那个宣传部。 啊，他们说是他，我不是很清楚他是不是被歧视啊？然后，
But it didn't.
但是那个公司，他工作的公司没有被免罪啊。But it didn't absolve the company either。这个 EEOC 没有免除这个公司的罪过。
But it didn't absolve the company either, and said Noble could sue.
啊，说 Noble， 这个人，这个女的叫 Noble， 说 Noble， 你可以去告他们啊，告你们公司啊，看看能不能告赢。
But it didn't absolve the company either.
那 EEOC 没有免除他们的罪责啊，说是 Noble， 你去告他们啊，肯定能告赢。好，我们看下一个词。The next word is absorbing. To absorb means to take in water. For example, let's see, absorb. Like a sponge can absorb water, right? When I clean my kitchen sink, for example, I first absorb water with this sponge and then I clean. Right? So woman's product has to be absorbing, right? So that's absorb. So absorbing simply is the ing form of absorb, right? It is, so for example, the sponge, I'm not writing well. The sponge is absorbing water. 这个是最常见的形式啊 ，absorbing 最常见的意思，它就是 absorb 就吸水的这个 ing 形式，这是最常见的。But it also has a second meaning, right? It also means to 就是吸引人的，非常有趣的。Right? It's very interesting, very capable of arousing and holding attention. Right? That's what absorbing means. Let's take a look at absorbing. 但是更常见的一个意思呢，就是吸水啊，或者是吸收信息、吸收养分、吸收什么东西，这是最常见的。但是还有一个意思就是它非常的引人入胜。我们来看一下这些例子啊。
The toxin just
这个是 absorb， 我换一个 absorbing。稍等一下，再 check 好。
I find it absorbing. I've become interested in local history.
现在开始对本地的历史很感兴趣。
I find it absorbing.
我觉得它很有意思啊，很让我就是让我觉得很有意思啊，让我觉得很有意思。Absorbing 意思是就被迷上了啊，就是我迷上这个了啊，我觉得这个东西一看，然后我就被吸进去了啊，就它字面意思上就是我就被吸到那个。比方说书里面了啊，我看一本书，我觉得this is so absorbing. That means I'm absorbed into the book. 我被这个书好像吸进去了。我们再听一遍啊。
I've become interested in local history.
我对这个 local history 很感兴趣。
I find it absorbing.
I find it absorbing. I find it very interesting. I find it so interesting that it captivates me. That's what it means. Let's take a look at other examples.
The smoke is actually rising through the bed of grain. The grain is absorbing that smoky character, and that ultimately makes.
Right, 这里absorbing 意思是吸收的意思啊。
Smoke is actually rising through the bed of grain. The grain is absorbing that smoky character.
Right, absorbing the smoky character. Absorbing 一般的意思就是吸收，就是吸收。
And the tobacco is like a sponge. With time, it starts absorbing all those flavors. And tobacco is like a sponge. With time, it starts absorbing all those flavors.
Right. Tobacco is like a sponge， 就像海绵一样，它开始去吸那些所有的那些味道，吸那个什么的味道。再听一遍。
Tobacco is like a sponge. With time, it starts absorbing all those flavors and all those aromas from the wood.
From the wood 啊，就是从木头里面可以吸那个味道啊。所以 absorbing 多数的情况下就是吸收的意思啊，就是 absorb 的这个 ing 形式。
Shock absorbing foot,
it would have been among the fastest bipedal animals in the history of the world.
好，他说这个恐龙呢，它的那个脚啊可以抗震啊，可以吸震啊，字面意义上就是把这个震动给吸进去啊，就它抗震啊，它可以减震。再听一遍。
Foot, it would have been foot, it would.
等等。
Long, slender legs. It's got the shock-absorbing foot.
它的那个脚是 shock absorbing， 它会吸收它这个震动，吸收震动。shock absorbing foot 啊，就 because it absorbs shocks。再看一个例子啊。有没有另外那个意思的 absorbing it？
Smile on my face as if I'm absorbing it.
Absorbing， 他说这个意思是他在吸收，他好像在吸收一个什么信息，或者是一种感情，还是什么？我们来看看他到底说的是什么。
Okay. If I were in her shoes, I would listen to my future mother-in-law, and I would maybe put a smile on my face as if I'm absorbing it in the right way. But
他说他应该去听他这种岳母的话啊，就好像是他在吸收那个话一样啊。As if I'm absorbing it， 所以 absorb 有吸收水的意思，也有吸收什么养分，还有吸收信息，吸收一个人的话，好好把他的话好像吸收进去啊，吸收一个人的话也可以是 absorb 感觉，比方说你去海滩啊，非常的享受，那种享受的感觉你也可以absorb， 你说I'm just absorbing it，I'm just absorbing the enjoyment， 这也可以 absorb 啊。作为形容词的话 absorbing 也可以是一个非常 captivating 的一个比方说一本书很有意思啊，这是 absorbing， 但是这种用法比较少，多数的用法呢还是就是吸收的意思，吸收。好，这是 absorbing。The next word is abstain. Abstain simply means refrain from doing something. Refrain from doing something， 就不做一件事情啊，控制自己不做一件事情啊，就是戒绝。比方说 abstain from tobacco 就是戒烟啊 ，abstain from tobacco。还有弃权的意思，弃权。比方说我们要投票啊，那几个人同意啊？So how many people agree, how many people disagree, and how many people abstain？ 几个人弃权啊？我弃权啊 ，I abstain， 就是我弃权。我们来看看 abstain 的用法 ，abstain， 投弃权票嘛 ，I abstain 嘛 ，I'm not gonna vote， abstain， I abstain。Agree, disagree, abstain. See that ballot box? Agree, disagree, abstain. 好，右边那个，你要不要喝酒？给，来喝杯酒。然后 no， 这叫 abstain from alcohol. Abstain from alcohol 就是不喝。所以 abstain 有两个意思啊，一个是控制自己不做一件事情，这是第一个意思；第二个意思就是弃权投票啊，不投票的意思。好，我们来看看 abstain。Previous
guest referred to that the U.S. actually abstained in acceptance of it.
就是美国弃权了啊！美国弃权，我不表态啊，同意不同意，我不表态。The U.S. actually abstained in acceptance of it. Whether I accept it, well, I'm not gonna make my voice heard. I'm not gonna use my right.
To that the U.S. actually abstained.
They abstained. Abstain 往往跟就是说是那个这个很多电视节目说是这个什么他们没有性关系啊，他们 abstain from sex， they abstain from sex 啊，就是他们去就是禁欲啊，他们禁欲。
Where I am abstaining from sex.
好多那都是这个。
On the second date, told him I'm abstaining from sex.
很多人一想到 abstain 就想到 sex， 很多人一想到就因为他经常听到 abstain from sex。
Abstaining from sex, not because I think sex is bad. I'm just at
啊，很多人就是一想到 abstain 就是 abstain from what from sex， 然后你看都是 abstain from sex OK 这个不一样。
They make him sign a contract stipulating that he'll abstain from racing while the film's in production.
他说 he'll abstain from racing， 他会克制自己不去赛车。他本来很喜欢赛车，然后他说 I'll abstain from racing， 就是我这一段时间我不去赛车啊。我会去克制自己不去做这件事情。
They make him sign a contract stipulating that he'll abstain from racing while the film's in production.
再听一遍，慢一点。
They make him sign a contract stipulating that he'll abstain from racing while the film's in production.
He'll abstain from racing while this film is in production.
The Catholic Church teaches that you are supposed to abstain from sex before marriage.
明白吗？能听懂吗？
The Catholic Church teaches that you are supposed to abstain from sex before marriage.
再听一遍。
The Catholic Church teaches that you are supposed to abstain from sex before marriage.
这是 abstain。 abstain 的名词是 abstinence， abstain 是动词，然后名词形式是 abstinence。 我是温哥华长大的，所以的话，这个我们不会说 abstinence， 我们说 abstinence。我们这个我们温哥华人啊，说这个说 a 的时候会比较有点像咱们汉语的abstinence abstinence。但是美国加利福尼亚那边的人可能一般说 abstinence 会发的稍微高一点 abstinence。我会说 abstinence 因为我温哥华这块学的英语。不管怎么样，我们来看一下 abstinence。 肯定又是什么 abstinence from sex 这类的词组。
Yeah, well, my mom was real big on abstinence.
他说他是吃药还是指戒欲啊？他是怎样可以避孕啊？是吃药还是什么？
Yeah, well, my mom was real big on abstinence.
他说我妈妈比较赞成这个戒欲啊，而不是吃药。Blow.
Yeah. Hey, at least you. Yeah, well, my mom was real big on abstinence.
上一句话不知道为什么，就是我这漏的不了。他说 ，Well, I use pills 啊，我用药，我吃药。So of course, she chose foam. 我不知道他这个 foam 是指的是什么啊 ？She chose foam. 然后他下一句说
，Yeah, well, my mom was.
但是我妈妈比较喜欢就是用 abstinence 这种方法去避孕。
Real big on abstinence.
对，这是不是就叫做 family values 呢？这是不是就是家庭价值观
Did your husband dislike all of his family values?
Does that qualify as family values? 再看看别的 abstinence 啊。
Trying to practice abstinence.
他说 trying to practice abstinence 啊，就是不发生性关系啊，克制自己不发生性关系，这叫做 abstinence。
Trying to practice abstinence, you know.
Practice abstinence 啊 ，trying to practice abstinence 啊，就不生小孩，用这种方法不生小孩。然后还有什么？
For abstinence, it's great if you wait.
对 ，abstinence 今天一般就是指这个意思啊，就是不进行性关系啊。你看，这 birth control。birth control，birth control 就是生育，就是控制生育啊，计划生育，控制生育啊，然后
around birth control, so there's been a big shift towards abstinence funding.
We've seen a number of additional religious protections for medical workers, and we've also seen a.
他说现在有很大的一个趋向啊，就是政府给拨款，让大家戒欲，让大家戒欲，美国。有意思。
Around birth control, so there's been a big shift towards abstinence funding. We've seen a number of around birth control, so there's been a big shift towards abstinence funding.
Abstinence funding. That's interesting. There's funding for abstinence. That's interesting. Maybe I can get some. All right. By preaching one. Okay, let's see.
Have a Halloween party, but of course she had to go and ruin it by preaching one of her abstinence sermons and speaking about STDs.
Okay.
But of course she had to go and
preaching one of her abstinence sermons 就是一个牧师他在这个布道他by preaching one of her abstinence sermons 他的一个这个布道的那个布道词是关于这个戒欲的关于 abstinence by preaching one of her abstinence sermons.
But of course she had to go and ruin it by preaching one of her abstinence sermons and speaking about STDs.
Speak about STDs. STD 就是那个性传染病sexually transmitted diseases. Speaking about STDs.
But of course.
他说这个牧师就开始布道，说你们要戒欲，然后有性传染病什么什么什么。
But of course she had to go and ruin it by preaching one of her abstinence sermons and speaking about STDs.
所以 abstinence 今天一般是这个意思，明白了吗？abstinence。好，我们来看下一个词，对，一般来说今天是这个意思，但是。可不可以也是这个投票弃权的意思？我觉得好像比较少，现在很少人会用 abstinence 去说是I abstain from voting 一般来说 abstinence 意思都是这个什么，都是防止性病什么什么，就是这种东西所以就跟投票好像今天这个 abstinence 跟投票没关系了，跟投票没关系了。好，我们来看下一个词。下一个词很常见 abstraction 有没有什么问题？下一个词是 abstraction。abstraction 就是让一件事情抽象化。Let's take a look at abstraction.
Entrenched in abstraction, and he has his own synthesis, his artistic ingenuity, individuality, impact. We're working at the dawn of the modern civil rights movement, when American art is really, entrenched in abstraction.
他说美国的艺术 American art is entrenched in abstraction. 我给你写一下，它是一句话分成两段了，我给你写一下。American art is entrenched in abstraction. Entrenched 就是根深蒂固的意思根深蒂固 entrenched in 就是在这个东西上面根深蒂固 entrenched in abstraction 就是 abstraction 已经根深蒂固了entrenched in abstraction 抽象化抽象派艺术在美国的这个现代艺术上这殿堂里面已经是根深蒂固了现在很少人会去画这个写生画写实很多人都画这个抽象所以 American art is entrenched in abstraction 所以有一个人他那个画风就非常独特
Impact. We're working at the dawn of the modern civil rights movement when American art is really, entrenched in abstraction. And
所以 abstraction 就是抽象将一件事情抽象化的意思
But the abstraction for me is this idea of getting rid of everything that's not essential to making a point.
再看一遍啊。
But the abstraction for me is this idea of getting rid of everything that's not essential to making a point. But the abstraction for me is this idea of getting rid of everything that's not essential to making a point.
明白了吗？就是抽象啊，将一件事情抽象化，对我来说就是把所有不必要的东西全部都去掉啊，就这个意思。所以 abstraction 是 abstract 的名词形式 ，to abstract 就是将一件事情抽象化啊，将事情抽象化。然后 abstraction 就是它的名词形式啊，名词本来是动词，动词是 to abstract， 是这个抽象，把事情抽象化，然后它的名词是 abstraction。For example, the abstraction of a concept 啊，一个概念的抽象化，所以这是 abstraction。哦，这个词好难，好难，好难。这个词是 abstruse， 非常非常少用了。今天今天很少人用。所谓的很难的词，我跟你们讲，所谓的很难很难的词，所谓的很难很难的词，就是没人用的词。你好，现在我们只有2个人在看直播。那个所谓很难很难的词，就是现在很少人用的词啊。在读什么 Jane Eyre， 读什么简爱啊，那种就是很老很老的小说里面，你经常看到那些词，你觉得呀，当时那些作家好厉害，用这么难的词，但其实就是因为这些词现在不用了，以前这些词都是很平平凡凡的词啊。那 abstruse 就是这么一个词啊，就是很，今天我们觉得哇，这个好厉害，你都知道这个词，但是其实以前知道这个词并不奇怪啊，因为词它有生命的周期啊，一个词在一个时期它兴盛，然后慢慢就衰退了。我们来看看 abstruse 这个词哈。好，我们开始录。下一个词是 abstruse。其实这个词呢它非常的少见啊，现在非常少见，以前很常见，意思就是深奥的，很难懂，一件事情很难懂，就是它很 abstruse。我们来看看这个词的一个使用历史啊。你看看这个 Google Ngram， 在1800年啊，它是它的兴盛期，是1800年，然后之后它就越来越少啊。今天就没几个人说 abstruse。今天我们说一件事情非常的，可以说 it's very profound 啊，可以说它很 profound， 或者说它很 very deep。或者是 enigmatic， 我不知道我这个拼写对不对哈。反正就是今天很少人说 abstruse 嘛，今天可能说 mysterious 也可以 mysterious， 或者是 esoteric 也可以 esoteric 也是另外一个词啊，但是至少比 abstruse 要常用。来看看 abstruse 的用法。
This doctrine is abstruse, and though the images of garment
这是哪本书？这是 Ralph Waldo Emerson 写的一本书 Nature。
Doctrine is abstruse, and though the images of garment, scoria, mirror, etc. may stimulate the fancy，
就是 abstruse， 就是很深奥难懂。
Its contents, however abstruse, had been burnt into his memory.
Content 非常的 abstruse， 非常深奥难懂这个声音有点大，换一个。
Involved and abstruse with subtle hagglings over definitions, enormous digressions, quarrels.
那这是 George Orwell 啊，1984George Orwell 写的1984，他说，什么东西 involved and abstruse when the argument as to what they were supposedly arguing about grew extraordinarily involved and abstruse 啊，说他们之间的这个争吵越来越深奥难懂。所以不管怎么样啊 ，abstruse 就是以前人经常说的说非常的 incomprehensible，非常的 difficult to understand，但是现在呢，人已经很少说了这个词，就你看用的人越来越少，越来越少，越来越少啊！所以今天你只有读就是以前人写的那些书，以前比较老的书里面，你才能找到这个词儿。好，所以这是 abstruse。下一个词是 accentuate。accentuate 就是让一件事情更突出、更好看。这个 scent 啊，在这里其实它跟我们英文的这个 chant 是一个来源。chant 是唱的意思，唱歌，对吧？比方说和尚在念经啊，就是他们 chant 也有唱歌的意思啊。合唱团他们 chant 一个什么歌？那 accentuate 意思是好像是歌颂它啊，让它能够凸显出来，是这个来历啊 accentuate。所以 accentuate 就是去凸显一件事情。我们来看看 accentuate 的用法。accentuate 有没有什么问题？ accentuate
because the stand-up picture accentuates the leather jacket.
这个凸显它的这个皮夹克啊，凸显它的皮夹克。
Because the stand-up picture accentuates the leather jacket.
It accentuates the leather jacket.
Skirt to accentuate that waist.
它会让它的腰显得漂亮一点。
Skirt to accentuate that waist.
他说这个裙子啊，让她的腰显得漂亮一点。
Or so we put her in a peplum A-line skirt to accentuate that waist.
Accentuate her waist，让她的腰更能凸显。还有什么 ？Accentuates the human body.
Where it needs to hug and it accentuates my boobs. And it accentuates my boobs.
Shadow that inner diva.
美国电视这个
And it accentuates my boobs.
Shadow that inner diva.
明白吗？明白它什么意思吗？
And it accentuates my boobs.
Shadow that inner diva.
And it accentuates my boobs.
Shadow that inner diva.
And it accentuates my boobs.
对，明白 accentuate 的意思吗？啊，就是凸显啊，让一件事情凸显。
Countries' ethnic tensions are accentuated.
Tensions are accentuated 啊，这个矛盾现在被凸显。
Tensions are accentuated.
哟，这要是什么地方？这是科索沃。
Belgrade. The arrest took place in Mitrovica, Kosovo's most volatile town, where the country's ethnic tensions are accentuated.
啊，这个地方的科索沃种族冲突现在越来越凸显。
Tensions are accentuated.
Tensions 啊，这个紧张 ，tension 意思就是紧张或者说冲突 ，accentuated 啊，现在越来越凸显。好，这是 accentuated。好的，今天我们讲了20个词啊，从从 abashed 一直讲到 accentuate 啊，今天我们就讲到20个词。好的，那我们下一个直播见，好不好？今天来的人很少啊，但是万事开头难啊，我们以后人会越来越多的，我有这个信心，有把握。我们在哔哩哔哩上有10万个粉丝，几乎10万个，然后我们的汉语频道，汉语 YouTube 频道大概有6万个，6万个，所以以后我们这个直播间会越来越热闹啊。今天就你们几个人啊，就今天有33个人看啊，所以这是一个很小的开始啊。随着我讲这个雅思的词啊，之后我也会讲得越来越好，然后我这个网站也会做得越来越好啊。这个网站现在这是我昨天刚刚弄出来的啊，让它可以搜索不同的美国电视里面的字幕，然后让你可以看这个词是怎么用的啊。之后啊，我会不断的改善这个网站啊，让这个网站越来越好啊。行，那今天来看的人虽然不是很多啊，但是我们还是会继续啊。好，我们下一个直播见啊，拜拜。